Sixers fans, how we feeling out there? Hey y'all, my name is Lauren Gordon. Some of you may already know me on social media as Lauren Fan of the Year. Others may have just stumbled upon this podcast, but either way, I want to first thank all of you for tuning into my very first podcast. I'm just a Sixers fan, the Lauren Fan of the Year story. Y'all, I'm super excited to launch this podcast on 7/6 day. You get it? Today is July 6th, 7/6. I'm a 76ers fan. So y'all, this is an incredible day for me, and I'm grateful to share this podcast with all of you. But first, let me give an overview of what this podcast is all about. It's my story as a Philadelphia 76ers superfan. Y'all, I've been a basketball fan, primarily NBA, but more specifically, Philadelphia 76ers for most of my life. I'm not just a casual fan. I am a super fan, and the Sixers are intertwined throughout most of my life story. It's almost like a movie soundtrack. And even at this age of 54, I can look back on my life and see that I have had the most amazing experiences and have met the most amazing people just being a Sixers fan. And I'm grateful for it all. I know I say that all the time on my social media, but it is true. I have an incredible story, and I decided to record my story, y'all, to pass down to my children, to continue the Sixers tradition and keep the legacy going when I'm dead and gone. And I figured, hey, why not share this story with the world while I'm still alive? So here is my story. I hope you enjoy it. When I was growing up, I told myself that anyone who tried to debate me about my Sixers, I'm the biggest Sixers fan I know. I knew that no one could out-Sixers me. I had researched all the players, all of their stats. I went to Sixers camp. I was going to the games down at the Spectrum. I wore Sixers gear, and I knew as a young girl back then, debating with mostly boys about the NBA, that this was my gift. This is what made me stand out from everyone else. I believe this about myself, and I know I manifested where I am today as Lauren Fan of the Year because in 2019, Fansided, a national sports media outlet, recognized me as their 2019 Fan of the Year in their annual contest. I won this recognition based on my fan story, a video that was submitted, an interview, and public votes. So thank you all who voted for me because I beat out a Kansas City Chiefs, Houston Astros, Minnesota Vikings, and even a Dallas Cowboys fan, yes, to win the prestigious award. Winning the award solidified what I already believed about myself growing up decades prior, which was I was a Sixers superfan. And now it was officially documented in a nationwide contest. It just intensified my fandom and catapulted my exposure in ways I never dreamed. See, y'all, cheering on my Sixers makes me happy. I've spent most of my life wanting to share my passion for the Philadelphia 76ers with the entire world. Learning about the players made them real for me, as if they were part of my very own family. I was a self-appointed Sixers ambassador, and it was my mission to spread Sixers love and make everyone I knew a Sixers fan. I thought with enough fan love and support, we could actually will our team onto another championship. If it was only that easy. Y'all, I've done many interviews, and I am often asked, Lauren, when did you first become a Sixers fan? And my response was always, back in the 1982, 1983 season when we won the championship, And while that celebratory, joyous occasion is a highlight of my fan memory, after I really thought about it, I realized my exposure to basketball, the NBA, and the Philadelphia 76ers actually went back to the 70s during my early childhood. I told y'all I'm 54 years old, and I know I jumped right into 2019 when I won the Fansided Fan of the Year award But maybe I should rewind the story a little bit and start from the very, very beginning. Y'all, we're talking about 40, 50 years ago. I was born in 1970. I grew up in the North Hills Projects, which is a Philly suburb. I never lived in Philly. And even though I grew up in the projects, I never thought we were poor. I had everything I needed: love, family, support, sense of community and village, things you don't see much of nowadays and things that we probably took for granted growing up. But what is wild, y'all, is the fact that mostly all the people living in North Hills is my family. Like everyone was related to me either on my mother's side or my father's side. All my friends were my cousins growing up. If I couldn't do something, the older cousins would either show me how to do it or they would tease me. And as one of the younger cousins, I definitely did not want to be teased for not being able to do something. So I was always competitive and I hated to lose. I was always surrounded by family and love, but my heart, y'all, was my Nana. She lived in North Hills and she spoiled me, and we had such a strong bond because my mom was my Nana's only daughter, and I would, spend a lot of time just hanging out with my Nana at her speakeasy, which she ran from her home. I was a typical little Black girl growing up in the 70s. I liked playing with my doll babies and Barbies, playing kickball, red light, green light, tag, hide and go seek, Mother May I, playing jacks, double dutch. But basketball was always there in the background. See, the nucleus of the North Hills projects, besides Antioch Baptist Church, was the basketball court. And just like Upper Dublin Township provided the community pool up the street, they also provided a huge basketball court in the center of the projects, and we called it the Blacktop. And it was fun, and it was accessible 24/7, and it was free. From sun up to sundown, and even in darkness, the guys was always out there hooping. All you needed was a ball, and everyone in North Hills had a basketball, and sometimes a few would be left out on the court. So if there was nothing else to do, you could always ride your bike or roller skate on the blacktop, or just shoot some baskets. And since I spent a lot of time over my Nana's, I spent a lot of time on the blacktop, and I would just sit on the wall of my Nana's yard that actually faced the blacktop, and I would just watch the guys play. And there was always music playing, and that was the spot where everybody hung out. And I think between the music and listening to the trash talk, I don't think I can recall a time when I didn't know who Dr. J was. Like, I remember guys would be dunking the ball and say, "I'm Dr. J," or "I'm George Gervin," or "I'm Daryl Dawkins," and I would hear these names. But I didn't really know much about the NBA. I would hear people talking about last night's game and who the Sixers would be playing next. And after a while, Dr. J was just a name that everybody was talking about. And I remember thinking Dr. J was everything. He was cool. He was good looking. He had what we would call nowadays swag. He was athletic and he could dunk a basketball. And I always thought that anyone who could dunk a basketball was amazing because I knew it was something that not everyone could do. And it made what was considered ordinary extraordinary. And Dr. J was literally the poster child for the Sixers in the NBA for his incredible dunks. But everyone, including all the little kids in North Hill, we all knew who Dr. J was. In fact, y'all, I remember me and a bunch of my cousins going to the movies and seeing The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh just because Dr. J was in it. My mom and dad would talk about the Sixers, and I would hear the names of different players. I'd watch the games, but I wasn't really paying much attention. I was just being exposed to the game. But eventually, the players' names would become ingrained in my brain. Then it was the visual. My mom had Sixers posters hung all around our apartment. Daryl Dawkins' infamous Chocolate Thunder, the Bobby Jones Secretary of Defense poster, and of course, Dr. J was everywhere. And she had a huge crush on Andrew Toney. And if she was washing dishes, I'd be watching the game with my dad. And when Andrew Toney scored, and I would be like, Mom, there goes your boyfriend. And then quickly look at my dad, and he would quickly look at my mom to see her expression before like shaking his head like, Andrew Toney, number 22, Deuce Deuce, would grow to be nicknamed the Boston Strangler. And I grew to love him too because I hated Boston. And it's funny how I learned early on to hate the Boston Celtics. I enjoyed rooting for the Sixers, watching the games with my mom and dad. I wanted to know about each player, not just on the Sixers, but also on the opposing team. I grew to learn the different teams in the league, the different cities, where it was in proximity to Philadelphia, learn about the divisions and the conferences. And then I began memorizing the names of the arenas, the names of the franchise players, the names of the coaches, and it was fun. It was like my own little game I would play with myself just to see how much NBA information I could actually memorize. And I wanted to learn everything I could about my Philadelphia 76ers. I knew the coach was Billy Cunningham and his nickname was the Kangaroo Kid. And I began to learn the names of the players on the roster. Dr. J, Daryl Dawkins, Bobby Jones, Mo Cheeks, Andrew Toney, Doug Collins, Steve Mix, Clint Richardson, Earl Cureton, Caldwell Jones, Monty Davis, Ollie Johnson, Lionel Hollins. And I knew their jersey numbers, their position. And I began to learn the basketball terms, traveling over and back, alley-oop, shot clock violations, all that stuff, right? And I began to learn about the playoffs and the intense competition in the postseason. And after a while, y'all, I began to feel connected to the players and to the team. So over the next few seasons, I remember going to the Spectrum with my dad and hearing now the late Hall of Famer Dave Zinkoff's, the Arena PA announcer, calling out the players' names. Number 6, Julius Erving. And y'all, I used to love how he would call out the player's name and how he would say Mark Ivoroni. And y'all, he was legendary. And the Sixers was a whole culture. My dad would take me to the Spectrum and we would sit up in the upper level, sometimes nosebleed, but y'all, I didn't care. I was in the building cheering on my guys that I would normally see only on a TV screen. And everyone knows that Dr. J is a Hall of Fame legend and arguably one of the best players in NBA history. He was the man. I remember Doc had won the NBA MVP for the 1980-1981 season. And I also remember the following year for the 81-82 season, during the postseason playoff game, we had to play our rival, the Boston Celtics, in the Eastern Conference Finals. Y'all, the Celtics have always been that team. They always had great talent, and they were always the team to beat. And they also had, at the time, Hall of Fame legend Larry Bird, who all of Philadelphia despised because he was so good. And y'all, the Sixers-Celtics rivalry still exists to this very day, and it is always must-see basketball. Y'all, we ended up beating the Celtics in Game 7, and it always felt good to beat Boston, but what I remember the most was at the end of the game, in good spirit, the Boston Celtics fans were cheering, beat LA, beat LA, beat LA. Y'all, it's wild because as much as I hate the Boston Celtics and their fans today, looking back, I have to give them mad respect for that because you would not see that in today's game with any fan base. But y'all, we would end up losing that championship game to the Lakers that year 4-2. Now the year is 1982, and I'm 12 years old. That season, I remember my mom and dad talking about we were going to get Moses Malone from the Houston Rockets. Now, y'all, Moses was voted MVP in 1982, and he had averaged a career high 31.1 points per game. He led the league with 14.7 rebounds per game. And my mom and dad was saying that Moses was going to take us to the promised land. And by the end of the 82-83 regular season, y'all, we would end up as the number one seed. Now, Moses, at that point, I remember him having the infamous faux 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 interview, which was his prediction of how we would win the playoffs in the postseason, basically saying it was going to be a sweep all the way to the championship and 4-4-4. But with his accent, he was saying faux faux faux. So, y'all, that regular season and postseason was incredible. Everybody was talking about the Sixers. And I remember a lot of the boys in my class was wearing Dr. J t-shirts. And as shy as I was, if I heard people talking about the Sixers, I would jump into the conversation because I knew my stuff. I always felt confident talking about the Sixers. And it's wild because looking back, I wasn't necessarily a confident girl growing up. I was on the chubbier side. I was Black, but I talk white. And I was always in my head about what I thought people thought about me. Things I don't give a damn about today. I think how most girls are at that age. At this point, I'm like 12, 13, at in-between stage. And, your body is changing. You're trying to figure out who you are and whatnot. And I think internally, what I always knew about myself was that I was a good person. I cared about other people. I was kind. I was non-judgmental. I was always very empathic and sensitive. I knew I loved, and I knew I was loved. I knew I was smart, and I knew about my Sixers better than anyone else. So during the 83 finals, y'all, my Sixers was quite the buzz. It was the topic of most conversations. The radio was playing that Sixers rap song. I don't know if y'all remember, but it was like, to the spectrum, everyone, 'cause the Sixers have begun to get hot. Hot. It's crazy that I still remember that song, but they was playing that on every radio station. Was it Power? Yeah, Power 99 DAS was out back then. And y'all, the Sixers energy was high. It was positive. Everybody was rooting for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I remember watching Game 4 of the finals at home on TV with my mom, dad, and Kelly. And I knew we was going to beat the Lakers. And when that moment came during the game, when the clock was winding down and Mo Cheeks ran down the court to slam the ball, that's when I knew it was a wrap. And I remember saying at that moment, oh my God, I didn't know Mo could dunk. It was just incredible, that feeling. And adrenaline just rushed throughout all of Sixers Nation, y'all. And we had swept the Lakers. And at the time, the coach was Pat Riley. It was just a great feeling. Now, the Sixers' road to victory wasn't necessarily faux, 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 as Moses had predicted. Instead, it was faux, five, faux, basically 4-5-4, because we had swept the Knicks in 4. We went to Game 5, losing 1 game to the Bucks, and we swept the Lakers in 4 on the road. And I would later learn that faux, five, faux is actually engraved on the Sixers championship ring. I think I read that somewhere. So y'all, Moses would be the finals MVP. We had won the 1983 championship under Coach Billy Cunningham. We had such a talented and historic roster with Dr. J, Moses Malone, Mo Cheeks, Bobby Jones, Andrew Toney, Mark Ivoroni, Earl Cureton, Clint Richardson, Franklin Edwards, Clement Johnson. And I remember watching the parade from home on TV. And I know it wasn't the same as being there in person, but y'all, it was still an amazing feeling. We had won the NBA championship. We hoisted that Larry O'Brien trophy up in the air, y'all, and for that moment in time, we were the best basketball team in the world, and no one could take that away from us. Oh my God, it's incredible, right? I will never forget that feeling or that exciting season. We had won the NBA championship, and I wanted to experience that feeling again. And I remember saying, the next time we win the championship, I will not be watching it from home on TV. I'm going to be out there on Broad Street. Surely we could win another championship, right?